I think you do have to be hard on yourself a little bit to hold yourself accountable. I said I was going to do this, well, do it. You're not even demanding that much stuff. If you have to write it down and set it on a post-it right next to your monitor to tell you the times and you check them off, however you have to do it, if it's important to do it.
You're keeping up the promise to yourself. And one of the best quotes that I read in Paul Triple H Levesque's book was, just like in the gym, in life, complacency sucks. Welcome to the Creative Cynergy Show. I'm your host, Coach Sen. Today we have a very special guest in-house. Not only is he a high-performance creator, he's a high-performance athlete, he has a busy 9-to-5 schedule, and he's a graduate of the DDPY yoga program. So he's exactly the epitome of why the show was created, and he has a unique perspective that he's going to talk to us about on physical and mental resilience. And we're going to welcome to the show right now, Jason Bishop. Jason, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate
Great
the
to have you on.
introduction.
Absolutely. Like I was saying, just with your background in and of itself, it's the reason why I created this channel is because of, creating creatives and working out and how we can balance the two with writing and well-being is what it started as, but now I've expanded it into all high performance creators. And since you just wrote your first book, we're going to talk about that. But first and foremost, tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background. Have you always been active or into sports?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Eastern Pennsylvania, about a hour 60 miles from Philly, Lehigh Valley. So anyone out there that knows the East Coast, they know the Allentown, Bethlehem areas. I grew up a very small town, 5,000 people. It's like the people that you saw that you went to kindergarten with were the same people you saw when you graduated high school. And only child. But it's, very, very active at a young age. It's just, that's what appealed to me. It was like that. I don't know if it's a generational thing, but just a young boy, it was always what you turn to. With sports, it was always that thing you can turn to, whether I was doing it organized, doing pickup games on my own, whatever it was. But athletics was always, it hit me at a young age too. It hit me as early as timely with the Masters of the Universe movie coming out. It's funny because that was, if you were a young male growing up in the early mid '80s, that cartoon was, and those toys were everything. Uh, so I think I would say that was like the genesis of that imagery that I had in my head of like kind of what you wanted. And I knew physicality, shall we say, was going to be something that was going to be profound through my life. And it was, and very quickly you learn it's like, even as a preteen, it's like what you put into it is what you get out of it. I've always loved getting the heart rate up, exhausting muscles, all that kind of stuff. It was just a lot of people just hate that. And it was like, that was a joy to me. That's almost like a vacation that you can take a couple times a week, you know?
That's a rare trait, and that's something that once you just start getting into physicality, it gets into your system, and you have to have it. Funny you
Does.
mentioned like the He-Man and the epitome of the masculinity in the '80s. That's pretty much how my older brother Charlie got into bodybuilding in the first place. Was Schwarzenegger, Stallone, and all of those things. So yeah,
Profound on so many people's lives, and it was so enduring, and it wasn't just like most things are like passing fancies, they hit you at about those things like they get engulfed in you, and it's pretty much a lifetime. It doesn't fade. Like, as strong as my love for, like you mentioned, those 2 actors in particular, um, it never wavered. It's like once it gets in you, that's it.
and it's a good thing to get in you. There's so many other bad elements that you could fall into in that time period, especially. But so, what sports specifically did you play?
Organized baseball, with the school and all that. Baseball and basketball were my sports. I was probably a little better baseball player just because I physically, not I'm not 6'2", 6'3", so, and baseball was more but I probably actually liked basketball more, but I was just a little better at baseball.
All right. So one of the other sports, even though it's called entertainment now, it's no secret that I talk about pro wrestling on here quite a bit or on my other pages. And I know that you are a massive fan of pro wrestling. So
Yes.
what actually got you into that? Because everyone has their story.
Into wrestling?
Into yeah, enjoying wrestling as a fan.
As a fan, it was just again, it was so timely to grow up, and we're not too far off, but to grow up at that time when, in particularly, the WWF was doing and the wrestling fans know if we I don't want to go too deep in the woods of that because but when they were doing the national expansion thing and it was breaking away from those territory days where it was very localized and growing up in the Northeast, that was the roots of the WWF anyway. And to me, it was just that era of it was a body era. Uh, I Hulk, of course, and we loved Hulk, but it was for me, it was just that era, that talent. I was always attracted to as we some of these are just because they're still making movies of these guys. The Von Erichs, Carey in particular. Um, I thought he was like a Southern Arnold Schwarzenegger, is how he came across to me. I mean, my God, like, he had so much charisma and, we talk about our favorite Warrior, Ultimate Warrior, certainly I put him above everyone. But it was actually the magazines. I can remember being, probably like 1st grade, and we had those, and I'm sure a lot of people still remember these things. It was the scholastic things that would come to the school where they would have like that week long where you'd buy the books,
Yes.
and I'd be buying like posters. And I just remember opening up, and it was one of those, magazines that were primarily picture things, and it had little write-ups. It wasn't, like the Wrestling Eye or things like that where it's very detailed. They have the rankings. It was just very picture. And I remember seeing a couple of them. The ones from New York, the WWF guys, I knew because I saw them on the TV on Superstars and stuff, and it was like, Randy and Savage and there were others. But I remember seeing Lex Luger, and I'm like, who? I
Right.
mean, I think this guy might look better than Hulk. Who is? Because I didn't watch the
Right.
Atlanta territory.
Mhm.
So once I got hooked, it was like the magazines to the TV to the figures. And again, it was that level of affirmative, like, masculinity that was just, and in those days it was very definitive, which are stories that I always liked. There was good guys and there were bad guys. There was definitive the good and evil. There wasn't any room for interpretation that you were lost on who was playing what role. And in those days, it was also very character driven. I think it's more in more recent for a lot of reasons, but there's so much TV, but it's very story driven. And some of the characters I think fall a little by the wayside and they almost can't tell them apart. In those days, we had bulldogs, we had steamboats, we had warlords, we had, beefcakes, we had, all of them.
Yeah,
So,
then we had
those really
plumbers and
worked.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Funny you mentioned the Scholastic Book Fair because anybody who grew up in that era remembers that fondly. We would wait with bated breath for that to come. I remember just buying books upon books because I knew at an early age that I wanted to be a writer and I wanted to read. And then I was collecting a book series and I missed one week and I missed getting the book. I was so mad. But since you have become an author since then, did you just buy the posters? Because I remember those too. I remember getting the poster books as well, but did you buy any books during the
I
Scholastic
sure
Book
did.
Fair?
Yeah, and in those days, it was, I used to buy I mean, you're really little, so you're buying, like, Bernstein Bears
Yeah.
kind of things even then, but I used to love the Choose Your Own Adventures.
Yes.
Those were and it would almost be like you would turn the page and you would just go to 47 or
Mhm.
59. I went to fi and then at the last, like,
Right.
I didn't look at the
Yep,
page, I didn't
yep.
look, I'm going to 47," you would do that, and
Yeah.
those were a lot of fun.
Those are a
Those are what I
lost art
remember from those days, those early grade school days.
for sure. Yeah, good times, good times. So we actually met at a wrestling event. I don't
Yes.
remember what year that was, but it was AEW was in
19, I
town.
think.
2019, possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So AEW was doing Double or Nothing, but in correlation to that, there was an event called Starcast. Huge event over multiple areas, but there was a special session from Diamond Dallas Page where he was doing his yoga. He doesn't like it to be called yoga, but it was the DDPY, and that's where we met. And so I have a twofold question here. So how did you originally get started doing DDPY, and then what was it like that day to be a guest instructor alongside DDP?
So the first part of that question, again, going back to being fans of the business and fans of certain talents. I always admired Dallas Page because he was enigma onto himself because people that know his story, he actually got started. He was in the business probably in his late 20s, but he was managing, doing announcing. He didn't actually start hitting the ropes and becoming a wrestler till he was in his mid 30s, which is really, I mean, I never say impossible, but that just, even the most optimistic person, you would say that to him, be like, come on, it's too late. It's too late. You know, do something else. And anyway, he made it happen. He had a great run. He's a huge star that any fans of the wrestling business know during those, we talk so fondly about those Monday Night War eras. He was such a major player there. But when, and he subsequently moved over in the early 2000s to the WWF. And I know once his career, his in-ring career wound down, I do follow these once they're out of quote unquote the mainstream and on TV every week. I love seeing what these guys and girls are doing outside of that. And I seen he was developing what was to be at the time, YRG, he was calling it at the time, yoga for
Yeah.
regular guys. And I thought very interesting because I knew it kind of stemmed from he had a back injury and they were talking to him about like your career's over. He didn't accept that. And he kind of worked himself between two with his wife at the time, Kimberly, who was also a talent in the Nitro Girls and fans know her, and his chiropractor. And he kind of put this program together. And it was yoga was something that was always fascinating to me. Always had a respect for it. But at the time when he was doing this, I was pretty young. I was in my early mid 20s, and it was you're still in that muscle head. I ain't doing no yoga like a lot of guys. Well, most guys are. And it's just I don't. It's not like I disrespect. I'm just not doing that. It's still about the bench, bro. It's still about the deadlifts and all that kind of talk. And what do you lift? What do you deadlift? Uh, but Dallas was someone that, well, if he's doing it, God knows could try that. And he had a very unique brand where he kind of took out the parts that weren't necessarily as appealing to me personally. And you still got the stretching, but he added this element of it was cardio yoga with calisthenics, which I love body weight exercise, always have because it was going back. This is what you were doing in your room at 9 years old, as many push-ups as you can. So I love the calisthenics part. And he combined like this hybrid of a yoga that had this like attitude to it that wasn't typical of yoga that hooked me. But above all, it was like and especially in more later years, which I still do it today, and certified, and I think I was the first certified instructor. I think there are others now. Uh, I started feeling better. And it's not like it's one of those things where I didn't necessarily always feel bad, but you start to do different workouts and you're like, there was another level of how my body could feel that I didn't even know was that attainable. And it was through his style of yoga, let's call it his style of it, that hooked me. And without that, I mean, I'd like to think maybe I would have gotten into some elements of yoga, but who knows? But he's kind of because it was him, I was okay to try it, and he was literally working with regular guys, and that was the appeal too, because it wasn't, like, ultra feminine, it wasn't like the coming one with the
Mhm.
environment, like, which is that hard sell for me at 25 years old. Uh, but going to that event, that was a really cool event. And I didn't expect to necessarily be up there. And I almost didn't go to it because, as you said, that event was very stacked. Part of it was at Tuscany and part of it was at Caesars. And I almost went to Brett Hart had a speaking engagement and I was almost went to that. My wife's like, you should go to that. You do that. No one else in this city does it. You're his only certified instructor, actually local in Vegas. And you know what? Okay, I'll do it. And it was actually his wife, Brenda, that and we didn't speak beforehand. I let him know that during the opening that I am certified and I do teach classes out here. And she was like, "Oh, we're getting you on stage. You're gonna help out with this thing." And Dallas was all behind it too. So it was a really fun, unique experience. I just remember about that day. It was very that we were packed in there pretty good. I do
Yes.
remember that. Like it was like I had a hard time kind of because I didn't want to step on people.
Yeah.
And because it was during a event with other stuff, people had their bags out, their sunglasses out, their keys out, and it's like, and we're all stretched out on mats, and I'm like, I really got to watch what I'm doing here, but yet you want to be assisting because some people were going there that were probably just wrestling fans that maybe didn't know of any of this, and this was their first time. So whenever you do something first, you can be awkward with it. But that was a lot of fun. I remember that went well.
It was an interesting event. I remember it being wall to wall people, and actually, we were so packed in that when DDP himself was trying to help me, I hit him in the knee. So my bad, but he can take it. Um, what one of the things that I love about Dallas, not only like you said, his brand appeals to regular people who may or may not want to do yoga, but it's a different kind of environment. So it's attracting a lot of different people, and it's helping so many like not only just the superstars, but so many people
Yes.
in regular life to get, back out there and get active. I actually met one of the DDP champions, a lady who lost a ton of weight, even though she had stacks of injuries and health problems. But I love his motivational stuff too. So, great role model to follow. But for anybody who's curious, how actually did you get certified through DDP?
Well, it's very much a curriculum. The there's book work, there's text work that goes with it. You have to know what he calls the diamond dozen, and I know you do the program, so
Right.
you're what.
Yeah. Sure.
So it's kind of like these foundational moves, and then you go back and forth with Hayden is I believe the guy who, and I believe he still runs the certification program. Uh, and then basically the final exam. So it's very much like a trade in like anything you would do in even in any other life. Or even a certified personal trainer. You know, you have your practical work, you submit your test, and then eventually you have to take a state kind of test. Uh, for his, you have to record yourself doing 2 workouts. One is one that they kinda designed for you, and then once you get the approval on that, like you're calling things right, it's just a good flow. And then the other part is you create your own workout off of the moves. So and then create your own that is kind of a flow. And I remember mine had a little more of the calisthenic stuff. And I mean, I can stretch better doing this than I it's there's always room for improvement, especially someone who probably, um, who lived in the gym and from a certain younger athletic stamp got away as a lot of young people do. You get away with murder until you're not 20 years old anymore,
Right.
and you have to really work at those other aspects where you were just kinda getting away with a little bit of athleticism and youth, and then that,
Mhm.
you know, and so I'm much better at some of the poses and the positions, but I remember doing a little bit more loading with the personal one I created with, like, the fingertip push-ups and the slow motion spot because it's like those are up my alley.
Yeah, I can relate to that myself. I am also a child of the bodybuilding era. So, like you said, when you're younger, you can go heavy and hard, but it starts to catch up with you. And now it's like twice the work, half the results. But it's also funny during some of the classes that I teach, I find myself falling into some of DDP's lingo. Not because I'm trying to rip him off or anything, it's just ingrained in my head from doing the program so much, and, one of my students was actually like, "Hey, do you know this program DDP? Have you done it?" I'm like, "Oh, busted." So, it's kinda funny. I do it now just tongue in cheek to throw her a wink, but it is a great program for anybody who wants to get started, check that out. But, one last question about pro wrestling before we move on, because the Cauliflower Alley Club is coming up, and
Yes.
uh, uh, we learned recently that one of the inductees is one of your favorites, Brett the Hitman Hart. So I would love to get your take on that and how excited you are to be going to check that out.
Well, I like I said, I knew, and we had spoke that 'cause I didn't think it was gonna, because I knew they had given him something in the past when they had it met like almost 20 years ago now. I don't think they can throw enough awards at Brett, personally. I mean, I think he is a hero to so many of the guys and girls in the business now. His legacy, we talk about certain talents, and it's like he's so admired, but when you look at what he represented and those from a character standpoint within the wrestling business of what someone stood for, that aside, in retirement, but what he stood for is that excellence of execution, the pink and black of that, all that stuff. And God, he made it seem this was real business. And I think so much of that is lacking. It's like, who's the Bret Hart today? I don't think there's anyone that kind of captured that integrity of how much he put into that character in those days. It was so real. And he had to pull an era that was on a decline because you weren't gonna out Macho Man, you coming off Hulk and Warrior, and it's like he brought it to a certain relatable reality. Brett was he was like the untouchable superstar, but yet he had this insane relatability of just that guy that you knew. He somehow captured both of those things, and that's really hard to do. And his performances were, but I just love it because I think there's no one more deserving. And like a lot of these guys, they're getting they're getting a little older now, as we all are. But
Yeah.
and then we don't know, like what happened with Hulk a year ago, and we've just lost that we grew up with. Um, you don't know what's around the corner kind of thing, and I'm just happy he's getting honored because those are always so much fun. I don't catch quite as many wrestling events as I do. I still love to go, and I still will go to a few, but as you know, Cauliflower Alley I don't miss. So, and I'm so happy he's going to be getting the Luthez Award, I believe.
It
Yeah,
is a little yeah, and, Natty's actually coming back, she got it last year to induct him, his niece, Natalia.
this is
Yeah, those
perfect.
are intimate events, and it's always cool to just be able to hang out with the wrestlers, past, present, and future, so it should be a good time. And if nothing else with Bret Hart, his legacy will always be no everyone says he was a great in-ring worker, and you can just go back and watch any of his matches, and they stand the test of time, so that being said, I'm gonna shift gears here to you recently wrote your very first book, and it came out last year. It's right here. It's called A Fighting Chance. And so curious if you can tell people, first of all, what is it about and how the idea came about for you to write this novel?
Well, the idea came about. I mean, the germ of the idea was probably around me for almost 20 years because I originally, when I got out of and during college, before college, I actually went to school for. I didn't know what I was going to do, like a lot of kids are when they go to college. But one of the things I did when I first went to community college, then I went to a university. I took a lot of things that would probably, if people knew me at the time, I can't. He's doing that. I took a lot of like public speaking and drama kind of classes and even did a little bit of theater and the creative writing stuff and screenwriting 101. So I thought like I enjoyed creating. Again, only child, I was always kind of creating. I didn't like even to play board games well, I'll make my own board game. And I remember even at the time, me and my cousins, we would like make our own characters, draw out board. Why do I need to play? I'm going to make my own. We're going to make our own rules and that kind of thing. And it started out as a screenplay. I wrote the screenplay, and it's not much different, but probably I'd say half of it translated over eventually to the novel, but it was quite different. It's as screenplays kind of be when you adapt to a novel because it's a different medium. And at the time, I did. What were you going to do with it? So I sent it around a couple production companies and agents, and and this is like almost 15, 20 years ago. Uh, And I remember getting some of the things back. It's good, not the project we're looking for right now. Please send us other things. We like the right, it's just not what we're looking. And those are kind of like the best things that you get. Some you get no responses, but some were very, very thoughtful and they were detailed on what works, but we're not it's such a niche industry. It's almost impossible. Dude, they're just interested in that project at that time and that kind of thing. And you're an unknown, it's unsolicited, the whole thing. Uh, but as far as the plot of Fighting Chance, it really the love I have for individual, which ironically, I'm actually a bigger fan of baseball, basketball, football, the team sports. But I also had such a love for the fights and boxing. I didn't want to do anything with boxing because of probably what you see behind me here. I'm not even going to touch that. It's the perfection is already there. God bless anyone trying to make boxing movies after 50 years of I don't even know
Yeah.
where you'd have to just tell completely different stories that are just maybe boxing. And then there's been some good ones, Million Dollar Baby, and there are others. But I thought, you know what? I'm not sure the world of MMA has been captured quite right. So I, I still watch MMA here and there in UFC, not as much as I did, but from the inception to about early 2010s, 13, I was pretty avid fan of the UFC. And it's nothing that I dislike what they're doing now. It's just more of like time in my day kind of thing. It's like
Right.
how we have to pick and choose our time. It's not like some. old fan. "Oh, I don't like this new stuff." It's not that at all. Uh, yeah, it's not that. So I thought, okay, that's fighting is you have your teams, but when you go, it's like the ultimate, it's like whether it's tennis even, but it's not physical. It's physical. It's, you have to be a great athlete. But fighting is like a bottom line. I think unless someone's ever done something like that, it's almost like you can't even imagine what that is, walking up there knowing you're going to throw hands, hold for hold with another person. In life is sometimes it's like it is a fight, and it doesn't have to be a physical fight. We're fighting every day against something, and
Hmm.
it's about not staying down because there's always something that's gonna knock us down, and if you build your life on a fountain, on a thing of sand, you're gonna collapse. And so I had this character, which it kind of was a very small part of it was I in my head, it's not anybody specific, but the earliest part of it was for those who know Ken Shamrock. He
Hmm.
was adopted when he was older, life of crime when he was a little kid, his life was a disaster. So that's very appealing to me, and a lot of young men and women get into the fight world when that home life is not good. And so this was a character who started his life, it's like, in life, we have to play by all the same rules for the most. We just do. But we don't all start on that same position on the football field. Sometimes we're deep in our own end zone. We got to go 98 yards in a minute 51 seconds, and you got the nice return. You're already in field goal range. And so I took this character that had a lot of passion, and it was really about people who are the ones that people don't expect much out of, and they turn out to surprise you. And it's not necessarily about wins and losses and money and accomplishments. It's the ones, these people in society that are kind of like casted aside. And it was a journey from this character, but he, again, didn't have that good upbringing. But he finds the mentor, that family that takes him in and harnesses these kind of passions that they see. But that's just the beginning, because you think a lot of people think that, well, if I just can accomplish this goal, my life will be complete. And you start to kind of accomplish that, and you're like, whoa, I'm actually, I was trying to avoid what really meant something to me. And it's that core, if you don't really have that love in your life from a support system, from a family, from significant others, a lot of stuff is very futile. It means very little. And it's kind of how 3 and 4 characters by chance meeting make up one. And at the end of the day, it really is that book I was trying to convey, because I did not want to write an ABC fight novel, because it's I don't it's very, very niche. And quite frankly, if it was about rights and lefts and holds and grappling and Kimura and rear naked chokes, there'd be more adept people that could tell that story, that live that world. And I wanted to write a story about relationships, loyalty, love, that would be much more relatable to, I think, uh, a female could easily pick that up, who never has an interest in watching a fight, and hopefully thoroughly enjoy it because of those, right? I mean, those movies that we enjoy, for instance, those rocket, I mean, they really are love stories more than anything, more than the rights and lefts are part of it. It's what they do, but that's not what drives them.
I think Stallone actually said that himself. It was more of a love story, and
Yeah.
the one thing that these movies do well, and even some of the MMA films that came out, is it is very internalized, and you see what they go through, as maybe the underdog, and then they wind up in the cage, and what it takes to do that. I remember early on in my fight or training career, they wanted me to fight, and I took one jab, and it felt like a car accident. It felt like whiplash. I said, "No, I don't wanna get hit in the face for a living." So, it takes a unique personality to wanna do that, and I believe you captured that well in the novel. I wrote, as you know, pro wrestling novel, same for the same
Yes.
reasons, and like you were saying about the holds and so forth, it's difficult to write and let it flow in the same way like you would write any other scene in a novel. So, that being said, what was the writing process like for you? Especially being this your first book.
I mean, I'm never I mean, with like, it is my first book that I put out there. Actually, I have other things
Mhm.
written. Like I said, I go back to the screenplay. I mean, I was developing like teleplays when I was 21 years old. I probably have 4 episodes, 5 episodes written for a TV show that I would have loved to have developed that was very much again, it was like if you take this observational comedy and it was just it based in like a college setting in the late '90s, and if you took like a really just confident, like a Zac Efron, I would picture in my head now, or a Hemsworth kind of guy, but you gave him the personality of almost like not far off from like a Woody Allen. And it was just that just wouldn't fit in this in the
Right.
way they act in the work environments and that was the kind of thing that those were based. I still think they have
A
potential.
little Van Wilder in there.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I think that there's something I would love to go back and revisit those. Uh, but the writing
We
process,
all have a drawer full of dead manuscripts that we picked apart,
yes,
but yeah.
absolutely. Because the writing never stopped. And I'm always, I mean, especially now with your phone, you have your little notepads in there. Whenever I have ideas, I'm going, and I used to do that before even like smartphones. I would have like a little book that I would just kind of put stuff down that I would keep and then throw when I get near a laptop. I throw it on the laptop. So I never have anything called like what people talk about as like writer's block. I've never had that in my life. It's always how I want to just transform and navigate what I already have in my head on here. And I don't think you get that if you're always writing. And when I say you're always writing, it's you're always thinking. It's not like I'm sitting in front of a thing 24/7 doing that. But for me, I usually craft things. I have for this specifically. I knew a topic of what I wanted to do, and eventually you kind of sometimes I have like a middle of the journey, and it's like that comes as one. Especially this one, I very late in the game, I completely rewrote the beginning, which is usually you don't do stuff like that because the beginning of this book, I thought what I had originally was probably maybe even better artistically, but for me and my taste, I thought it was actually a little too dark for what this book was gonna suggest and where it was gonna go. So maybe kind of sort of, but I completely wrote a different first chapter, really. Um, But for me, it's I usually start with a paper, because 'cause I'm that guy. I start with a paper, a pencil, because I make a lot of mistakes, and I would just draft this thing out in sections, and then you start pulling the sections, then you get on the Word document, and I just start putting it together one by one. Like we say, one doesn't write, one really rewrites,
Yes.
and that's just what it is, and you beat yourself silly. It's kinda why it took me so long, for no other reason. I'm never satisfied, which is not it's not really a good trait to have because you should
We
just
all have it.
yeah, I
We're
always
hard
think I
hearts,
can make
yeah.
something better.
Mhm. But eventually you have to step away and then, you do a couple of editing passes, but then you have to leave it alone because I can go back and look at novels that are published and say, "Oh, this could be better doing this," but eventually the story has to just live out there, for the readers.
And you see filmmakers do that too, because
Mhm.
I would always do that with the DVDs. I guess now you just do it on YouTube, but whenever they would have like the director's commentaries, I always,
Yeah.
especially your favorite films, I always watch, and then you see, oh God, you'll hear the director or the writer, oh God, I wish I could have that back. I would have done that so differently. You hear him talk like that.
Yeah. Well, and then case in point with the Rockies, Stallone went ahead and he did the director's cut of 4, and I watched it, and I didn't like it because I'm so used to the original theatrical release, and he cut a lot of stuff that I thought was important. Like, Bridget Nielsen's pretty much gone from that film, we all know why, um but yeah, it's like sometimes just leave it alone and move on to something else. But that is a very keen insight that you have to be able to go in and scrap that first chapter. Because I always tell people to kill your darlings, which essentially means you're gonna write something that you think you feel is great, but it doesn't actually fit in the story. So you have to be able to trash it or to write for the wastebasket because we all know that first draft is not going to be polished. So just think of most of it's going to the cutting room floor. So that's a really keen insight that you had starting out there.
I remember M. Night Shyamalan saying something about that when and obviously everyone knows him from his thrillers and those swerve endings he did. But I guess I remember he said something about he had a teacher that when he was writing his early stuff, he's like, you may not have to, but you should always be ready to cut your favorite scene because of those reasons. Sometimes, and you hear artists do that back in the record making days, some of your great artists and your great albums. They're like, "I know that was a hit. I had to leave it off the album because it didn't fit in the story I was trying to tell in these 12 songs. Maybe it'll make it to the next record, maybe not."
Right. Well, when J.K. Rowling was outlining all 7 books, she had backstory stuff that never made it in, but it was important to her to know those
Yeah.
things, just to have it in the back of your head. But besides the writing in itself, you are a manager of some high end towers here in Las Vegas. It's pretty much a sedentary office job. So,
It is.
like I said at the beginning of this, you're the epitome of what this show is supposed to be, and the projects that I'm doing is the sedentary with the active. So, for you, Jason, how do you stay active? How do you balance sitting for long periods of time and then maintaining your physicality?
Well, fortunately for someone like me, which I know is probably different from 97% of the population, whatever the number is, I had that, like we spoke earlier, injected in with me at a very young age. A lot of people don't have that. So the job that I have is exactly that. I manage a high rise, and we're in right off the Las Vegas Strip, and they're very, very high end, and it is very much I'm up there on the second floor in my, office, and it's not I mean, it's demanding, but it's like a lot of people have. You are sitting. There's no doubt about that. And I've had jobs in the past where you don't sit as much, but this one is exactly that. So there's little tactics other than I could get into. I'm a schedule oriented guy. So if I say I'm going to work out at 7 a.m., and I think anyone who's listening to this, if you live I don't know how people do that. They just wing their days. I don't. I mean, you're just promoting chaos. So the days are if I say I'm gonna work out at 7 AM, come hell or high water, I'm working out. But guess what? I get it. People have families, people have these commitments. Guess what? 7 AM didn't happen. Well, you're working out at 3 now. Uh-oh, something else happened. I get it. Everyone's asleep. You're getting your workout in at 10:45, and you're gonna do that. And if it means something to you, you're gonna do that. And then what's the end result? So maybe a couple times in one you get an hour or 2 less of sleep. So what? And I don't mean that sleep's not important, but when you keep making excuses to avoid something that is ultimately which would be these, workouts, and that's the other thing, workouts don't need to be 5 days a week for 2 hours. I never did that.
Mhm.
It's funny when people make this, I'm like, it's literally 3 days a week, 45 minutes, ballpark. I mean, yes, some 4 days a week and some 2, but whatever it is, it's not as much as people think if you're consistent. Now at work, I have little tactics like I will only fill I drink I am not gonna lie, sometimes I'll eat very little at my job, almost nothing, and I'm just a lot of water, tons just never enough water, and there's never enough black coffee. I'm that guy, so it's
Mhm.
just I always have 2, but I'll purposely not bring, like, what I would take to a gym, like those big hydro flasks. I purposely have small cups of water because the water thing that, um, we have that reverse osmosis thing where it's really good water actually, but I have to walk for it. So if I'm forced to get up and down because I'm not going to sit there without water. So that's something, but it's not uncommon. You got to do these little because you will get stiff. Your lower back will suffer. Your shoulders slump in. Everybody knows this. I'll even put the keyboard in my lap to kind of be because if you put the keyboard in your lap, it kind of forces you to straighten your back. So I'll do stuff like that. I don't have it now. I had it at my last, job. I had the elevated, uh,
Oh, yeah.
where I could stand half the day,
Standing that, yeah.
and I would do that.
Mhm.
So if I would have people are that office, I would and I that was fantastic. So those little things, and it's just about forcing yourself to get up. If you have to set a timer. But you
Yeah.
have to get up and move around. You cannot just sit because it's not gonna take long before your low back's gonna hurt I mean, it's full body too. People know the back, but your calves are gonna tighten up. So you just have to do it because it's about longevity. And if you constant and people usually when they get in that office job, they never leave it. So you have to figure out ways to get movement because if it's an 8-hour, 10-hour day, and then what, you go home and sleep 8 hours, what are you doing? Those it's very little movement. That'll kill you.
Absolutely. And this is one of the reasons that I started doing this is, first of all, I was in an office job and I noticed my hips started getting extremely tight and I wanted to find out ways to make sure that wasn't consistent because like you said, you go home and you're in too much pain to work out. So then there's more excuses. But this is what you said is exactly what I've been trying to tout on this show and in my other videos and so forth. It's small little actions that you can do daily that compound and get you to essentially keep a promise to yourself to maintain your physicality for longevity. So it doesn't take much, it just takes consistency.
And I would always you have to go in if it's like a diet, you have to make that point, I think, especially early on to like set reminder. You have to schedule yourself because if you think I'm just gonna do it, you have vague goals. Vague goals never work. You have to pinpoint what it is that you want to do. And sometimes that scares people because now you've defined it so you know when you're missing it. And I think sometimes that scares people. I mean, we're talking about small, like getting up and stretching and moving around, but I think that goes for any goal, whether it's fitness or otherwise. Like you need to write it down and be detailed of like your point A, your point B, this is how I'm going to get there. And people like to be more vague because it lets themselves off the hook.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you said, you have to have that clear vision in your head, and it's your vision. It was put there for a reason. So, like if you try to talk to somebody about it, this we were discussing this in the last podcast. They don't see it because it's not their vision, but you know what you have to do to go from A to B. And if it doesn't work, try something else. But you have that end goal in mind. It's sort of like in writing. A lot of people are what they call pantsters. They just have the idea and they go by the seat of their pants and they write it, which is crazy to me. Uh, I do outlines. I know the end game. I know the chapters. I don't do a full outline because that would take away the fun of it. And also, more often than not, your characters lead you in a different direction anyway. But at least you know the places that you're trying to reach. How you get there is up in the air, but you know that you need to get to a certain spot. So it's the same thing, like you were saying, with anything else in life. And for me, it always starts in the gym. If something's going wrong, I'm like, I can I can shift gears in the gym. I have a semblance of control of that, or not necessarily gym, but just health in general. And then everything else expands from that.
Absolutely. I mean, the gym is a great way to, you can get to the mind through the body.
Mhm.
The brain is a very people I mean, that's a very demanding organ, especially with oxygen. I mean, I think people always try these, to strength. So for like Alzheimer's and things that diseases like that, they want to try these word puzzles and all these kind of things to like the best way to create longevity in your mind is to utilize oxygen, which means anaerobic exercise which will really enhance that and enhance the quality of life. It's not even just having being structurally built and being able to move late in life. That strengthens your brain. You see so many people who are fitness, they lived it their whole life. Of course, the biggie for me, I mean, I certainly didn't grow up in his era, but he's probably about the biggest, certainly up there with biggest icon is Jack LaLanne.
Yes.
I loved him, and he lived, those he couldn't die because it would ruin his image. He was sharp as a tack at, like, 97. He There was no illnesses, it's just one day you get older and, as we're given a beginning and an end life to this, so we don't know when it's coming, but it was just like, yeah, he worked out earlier that day, he wasn't feeling that good in the afternoon, and he passed away almost in but it was like a week he was fine. So it's not
Mhm.
like living this kind of like diseased life up until the end. It's like, there you go. And don't get me wrong, I don't have the answer why by no fault of anyone's own why a 30-year-old gets sick and they don't see 30. I mean, who has the answers to those kinds of things?
Right.
But as long as you do these things to promote the opposite of that, I always say, you're given one life. Here we go. It's
Use it.
important, and I don't just want the first 25 years to be good. There should be a lot more after.
For sure. So a lot of great gems in there, but if you were to give one specific piece of advice for writers or creators who do sit all day on how they can balance their work and well-being, would it be the scheduling or would it be something else?
Well, I think you have to. and you have to get serious about the scheduling. Like, you kinda gotta be, um, I mean, you have to be a little hard on yourself
Mhm.
to hold yourself, and when they say, "Well, I missed it, it's okay." It's like people with New Year's resolutions, you were never serious anyway. That's why you throw it out there like that, and you're laughing with your friends, you're half drunk, and all those, and then you get in February 1st, you've already broken it shamelessly, but you laugh with your friend because they weren't as committed even as you, and you feel that camaraderie, but it does no one any good. I think you do have to be hard on yourself a little bit, not to the point of, like, mental illness, but chances are you're far from that, at least in that regard, to hold yourself accountable. I said I was gonna do this, well, do it. You're not even demanding that much stuff. If you have to write it down and set it on a Post-it right next to your monitor to tell you the times and you check them up, however you have to do it, it's if it's important to do it, because I always hate to say it when people talk about the aches and pains or the weight or this, it's like, I mean, it's if someone tries to help, so it's like after month turns into year after year, I got some people don't wanna hear it. You know, it's
Right.
like they wanna hear it because people love to help people who are helping themselves, if they can help. But if it's like I had used when I used to do the personal training, that was a big challenge for me, and when I kinda got more into group training. I had all the time in the world if I felt the conviction, if you were serious, I was serious. But if I know I gotta drag you through this, it just was not. You think it's not fun for you, what do you think I'm doing?
Right. It becomes almost like a therapy session, and we don't have time or skills for that.
Yes.
So you've gotta want it. And essentially, we said before, the little actions will build momentum until the point whereas you don't want to miss that because you're keeping up the promise to yourself. And one of the best quotes that I read in Paul Triple H Levesque's book was just like in the gym, in life, complacency sucks. So everything springboards from there. So absolutely, we gotta move, people, we gotta move. So for you, what else are you working on? Any new writing projects coming down that you can talk about?
I am working at 2, um, and all I can say about them, I don't have a timetable on it, obviously, but they will be done. I will guarantee that. So it's a second book to A Fighting Chance. And I'm actually working on again, it's just one of those things when I told people to select, and I don't usually talk about things until they're done because I just don't, even though I know in my head I'm going to do it and it will happen, but I don't put it out there until it finally is. And the completed project is done. But it's gonna actually be a children's picture book, and I've got an illustrator to kinda help me out because I don't draw. I'm not a tech guy. I mean, I wish I was. Like, I could sketch exactly what I want, but I wrote the narrative, I wrote the plot and the whole thing. It's a 32 page. It's geared more toward not like 2 and 3-year-olds with like 2 plus 2 equals 4, not that kind of stuff. It's like a little more in depth to that, but still a children's book, under 800 words and really beautiful pictures. And I certainly don't want to get into the AI stuff, like,
No.
because people who are smart, they know that, and that's just not me anyway. So I said I wanted to get a nice young talent that was kind of how I am, how I see myself with the writing, but someone with the illustrations, and I can commission them, and we're going to put this together collectively where I'm going to scan you exactly my vision, every word on the page, where I want everything, and then you're going to execute the actual drawings. And that's what I'm working on now. We're about halfway through that, and I can probably even show you a little bit. I don't know if it'll come through here, but I'm not going to show. But this is kind of, I guess, like a cover reveal of it. Uh, you can kind of see
Oh,
it.
okay, yeah.
So,
What is the
but
title?
it's The Adventures of Macy, the Goofy Newfie. This is the dog that you might hopefully not, but hearing in the background that won't stop barking, but I think she's, good now. But,
Yeah, because you're
she's
talking about her.
yeah, uh, but it's about, her and another previous dog I had. Her name was Maddie, a black lab. And but the kind of I don't want to get too much into it, but the moral of the story is how, and it's through dog idiom of how we, even as for parents out there, that it's that when you have a kid, it's like you want to push them to do new things, and it's okay, and they can go out there and explore. But they also, they go too far, they could be you get into trouble. And it's the dog, the older dog explaining the wisdom to the other dog. The younger dog, which would be Macy, is tied up in her fantasies on the screen, wanting to be like the superhero dog she walks. And ill-advised go out into the world where she's not ready for it, and, it kinda just goes from there, but there's I hopefully a nice little lesson for
That
that, but
sounds
it's a lot of fun.
that sounds awesome. I'm sure the parents are gonna love that too, because everybody loves books about animals, particularly dogs and cats, so that sounds like a winner.
Hope
And
so.
then with the you're doing a sequel to Fighting Chance, do you see this being like a 3-book series or multiple books?
We'll see. Um, in my mind's eye, I can see it going on for it depends what route I wanna go. I'm gonna take it one but in my mind's eye, I think I could probably get 4.
Okay. Well, we're looking forward to that. So Jason, I'm starting something new on this channel in this season because it is about high performers, and most of the time, everything online is curated and it shows just the pretty pictures, and nobody wants to talk about how I think we were discussing before how hard it is to get from A to B. There is no real overnight success. So, for you, your gritty middle, what is a challenge that you overcame that you're proud of?
Mm. I think for me, it was probably early on because I grew up a little when I was really little, it just really lacking confidence, just because of the environment I went well, I didn't grow up in the kind of the prototypical environment, the mom, dad, greatest and I don't wanna they everyone did the best they could, but I know I grew up with not a lot of confidence and almost just even shy to talk to at one point, even when you're like girls, I mean, it wasn't even what sometimes even guys. So I would think overcoming that and doing those things probably earliest on in college where I was couldn't have been unheard of to do public speaking classes and theater and those kinds of things that I did. Those were kind of because I just wanted to throw myself into the most uncharted waters that were really going to test me as a person to come out of a little bit of a shell. I mean, I wasn't it's not like I was painfully shy, but I wasn't very outgoing. I'll say that for sure. And I think there is a bit of a difference. So to be able to do those kinds of things that if you would have told me at like 10 years old, you'll teach classes and give presentations in front of boards of directors and things like that, I would have never have saw anything like that as a child and a preteen that I would have figured I'd have just been secluded in a corner somewhere, just doing something in private or very nominal, I guess.
So you made it a point to challenge yourself to actually go out and do the things that scared you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And again, it goes back to that one life. It's because I think, do I want to go the whole time feeling this way? Or because I sometimes I just get to the point, what are your options? What
exactly.
sometimes you have two,
Yeah.
and that might be it. And it's like, oh, I don't want that. So here's my only other option to throw caution into the wind and try this. So
There
I would have at a certain point in my life, I think that was toward the kind of the tail end of high school. I was like, no, that's what I'm going to do.
there always is an option though. I don't like when people say I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. It's just maybe like you said, there might be one or two choices. So you might have limited choices, but there's always a choice and there's always a road to take. And there's an old proverb from Japan. It's if you get on the wrong train, get off as soon as possible before it takes you too far down the road. So um yeah, absolutely. So, anything else you're doing right now that you want to tell folks about?
No, I mean, I think as far as what we cover on here, I think, the books, like I said, I got those 2 coming out, Fighting Chances on Amazon. I think anyone who wants a story of a camaraderie of how 4 people kinda what holes they have lacking in their lives, they kinda make each other, uh, whole and they go it's like sometimes I didn't kinda cover this, but I'd like to sometimes there's people who master the professional life and their personal life are not good. And then there's people who master that personal life and their professional lives are not where they want to be. And sometimes it takes that kind of wrangling and you admire things in other people that you see what could happen if you put in the work. Cause I think another one of my favorite films is Jerry Maguire, where that's a great example of that kind of a theme. Uh, and I think those if someone actually likes that movie, I think they'll actually like this book a lot. Uh, because
You
there's
must have you're gonna have a lot of readers then. That was a popular movie.
but as far as, like, the core and the emotion of the characters of the I mean, he's not a sports agent, although there are some agents because it's in the fight when that kind of very briefly, but, uh, if you're in search of purpose in life, and I think we're in search of love, and if it and it's not the easiest thing, but if you can get them, you don't let them go.
Especially these days, everybody's stuck behind a screen, and we don't get out enough face to face and talk to people in real time. And it's something that we've
Oh, so
lost, and we
true.
need to get back to. So hopefully, we come. It seems like it's getting circular. Gen Z or Alpha is starting to do analog now, so we're coming back around. Everything's got seasons, but yeah, absolutely. If you guys are looking for a good read with a good characters, a fighting chance is available now. Where did you say that people can get it?
Amazon, I kinda put it there. The ebook is, I believe, 3.99, and the hardcover or the paperback is 14.99, so, reasonably priced. I know when I eventually put out the picture book that I was talking about earlier, one of the things I know I have a vision to do with that is I wanna probably do something that's gonna give we have these charities in the city locally in Las Vegas that helps the animal shelter, but there's groups that help a lot of the homeless people with the dogs on the streets, and they're always looking for resources. So I know I plan on doing something with a couple of those with every bit of proceeds because I'd love to sell books. I don't need to make money off of them. I mean, like I do have a good job that way and that way, but I would love who doesn't want to see their work get out there. And I have no problem literally giving the profits to something I believe in, which I think is a neat little tie-in, especially with the subject of that book. So I really
That
would love
sounds
to do something.
that sounds amazing. But we also do have to get you out to some of the local Las Vegas book festivals and get a fighting chance in front of people because it's a fun experience. And you're in our community now. You're one of us. So
I appreciate that.
yeah, we'll
Yeah.
get that going. But so where can people find you online if they want to follow you and become a fan?
I am not extremely active online, but I do have, primarily, I would say through Instagram, and it's Jason Bishop, my name, JasonBishop, BST, and that's the Instagram handle. I go on there, and I don't post as much as I used to, but probably with this and then with what's gonna happen with hopefully with these next 2 books, I usually hop on there when I actually have something to kinda say in regards to that. I don't just, you post pictures of just, too many things. It's just nothing wrong with it. I used to more so, but it's kinda yeah, you know me a little bit. I'm not the techiest guy,
Yeah.
so I love that. Again, I'll always love the creativity of writing. I love that, and I love the kind of the heart and soul of your podcast is the working out and the exercise and being physically better than you are and all of that. But I'd be the first to admit I'm not. I usually need help with a lot of that stuff. But if you want to follow me, Jason Bishop, BST. Love to have you.
Absolutely. Yeah, go check him out, guys. The link will be in the comments in the description. But thanks again for coming on. Like I said, you are the quintessential thing that I'm trying to get across to you people, especially writers and creative thinkers who think that they can't balance their work and their well-being. But we, both of us, are examples that you can do exactly that. So great having you on once again. It's called A Fighting Chance. You can get it on Amazon, or when we get Jason out here in Vegas to do some of the local signings, you can get an autographed copy. But Jason, thanks again for coming on the show. It was a blast.
Thank you. It's always fun with you. I know we could talk for another hour, but
We could, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, anytime you want to come back on, maybe when you finish that next book, we'll have you back on to talk about it.
absolutely.
All right, that's it
Appreciate
for
it.
now, guys. Show's over, Synergy.
Thank you.
Thanks.